So you're doing the penciling and the inking on these pages
Yeah.
in your own style then?
Yeah, this is my own style.
Okay. So good start here, right? Nice establishing shot here. Looks like some asteroids or whatever going towards a planet, so storytelling matters. And then it's some kind of explosion, or the planet explodes or something, and then the explosion keeps going, and then boom, here comes our boy, Silver Surfer. Yeah. And I don't know, does it go into a flashback? Is that what it's doing here or no?
Yeah, there was I didn't send you some sequential pages because I didn't send you the splash page with the entering in the Galactus starship, and I sent you only the pages where he's already into. And then he confronts Morg, and then he starts to fight with him.
Okay.
And Galactus.
All right, so I'm going to look through some of these really fast here. It's a nice detail, nice body, nice anatomy there.
Thank you.
Again, some nice motion here on the body. Looks like here too. Yep. And then there's Big Bad Galactus.
Yeah.
That was your pencils, or what is this?
Yeah.
This is the pencil.
Yeah, it was Copic. Yeah, I sent you the pencil stage and the Copic marker and the elf tones that I did by myself also. And then the confrontation with Galactus. And that's it.
No Avengers. Yeah, I wish I could rotate all these pages here, but
yeah.
So here's some.
This I follow a script that I received from an editor from Marvel.
Yeah.
And it was a issue drawn by Stuart Immonen.
Yeah.
And I tried, as usual, to re-script it and re-envision it.
Yeah, there's a lot to like here. So Spidey, we like Spidey.
And then some,
pinups.
Yeah, I tried some different styles, some different pinups, only to show range of.
Yeah.
This is for this study, the last one, the one that you are currently seeing, are some sample shots from French comic book samples that I did, but eventually they didn't go nowhere.
Okay. All right. So I'm just gonna overall your stuff is really, really good, right? So I'm just gonna get a little nitpicky, but I keep doing what you're doing because there's a lot here to like. So on here, the composition of this, although all the bodies are pretty nice, you might just want to watch out for. See right here, the person in the background. The foot, there's no separation between that foot and the body here, right? And so it looks like it could come across as somebody that's tiny, and tippy-toeing on his shoulder. Right?
Yeah.
So we call those the tangent lines. I'm a big stickler about tangent lines. So all you had to do on that was just move her up just a little bit to get a break of even a 1/4 inch just to separate those two characters there, right? So again, even like right here, If you lowered Captain America down just a little bit, then you'd get the fist then would come more into the leg here. But see how the hip and the wrist right here is sort of running into each other. And then it also right here in the head, right? And the head and his arm there. If you lower him down a little bit, there'd be more room there, and there'd be more room up in here. Or if you moved them over, right? If you moved them over to this side a little bit more, it would accomplish the same thing. Anyways, those are just sort of some ticky boo things to watch out for. The drawing's really good. This is one of those pages where I sort of recommend trying to have at least one panel, if not more, of variety in terms of the scale of the characters that are on the page. So if I look at her, I mean, and there's two things. There's one, which is the scale of the characters, and then there's two, the positioning of the characters. So I have a character here, you know, the head's about this big and she's looking towards camera. This head is fairly similar in terms of size, and it's pointing towards camera, right? This head is kind of in the ballpark, right? So these three heads are kind of in the same ballpark, and they're facing forward. And then I've got another one at the top of the page here, right? So real quickly, when I see a page like that, I go 1, 2, 3, 4. I count 4 real quickly. Which, if they weren't all looking towards camera, it wouldn't be as noticeable. Like if this person was looking to the left or looking to the right, then this one wouldn't tie into these, or vice versa. If she was looking off to the side, like somebody was attacking her off from this side or something like that, then it would differ in terms of the drawing from what you have down here. But because they're all looking at camera, right, there's a little bit of a repetition. I mean, again, individually, these are good drawings, and individually, they're good panels. It's just that at times you just got to pay attention to that one last step, which is when you put them all on the same page, or do you start to see sort of a redundancy in some of the stuff that's on there, right? So this is, and to show that you are capable of doing it, that's what this page does, right? So you've got a big headshot here, which is a nice big camera shot. Then you go here and you're doing a little bit of a worm's eye view, and you're looking up at her. So her body is kind of small, which is way different than the scale of this body, right? And so this panel doesn't seem to be conflicting with anything, because you went in pretty close here, then you pulled camera back here. So that this is a good camera move. 1, 2, good camera move, right? Again, we could argue a little bit that this body here is a little bit in the range of this body, right? And so you might have been able to come in and almost done a little bit what you did here, which is to sort of crop it, that you've got her head maybe up in here, and then her sort of slugging him, and you're coming up over her shoulder. Keep him the same size, but then come up over her shoulder, literally, like you're coming up over her shoulder. Or something like that. So that's like this one. This is a really dynamic shot, and the reason is because I got the barrel of the gun. It doesn't get lost. Sometimes people have a tendency to want to put the barrel like right here, and it gets lost in the face and the hand, right? But you've got a nice barrel. So I see the gun, I see the arm, and then I see the head. And it also creates a sense of depth, which is one of the things that I've talked about before in some of the other ones, right? This one feels like the hand is in front of the face. I mean, you know, even if a crackle had gone a little bit across, it would even give even more. But this panel here with the shield blocking a little bit of her face, that's good, because again, it creates the illusion of depth that the shield is in front of her head. How do we know? Because it's blocking part of it. So that's a good one. And again, this size of the body compared to the ones up here in these other panels, again, is a good. If I go, just let me see if I go a little bit smaller. Oh, how do I go smaller? Smaller, Todd. Oh, I guess I can't. Yeah. This is a pretty dynamic shot here too. So again, sometimes like this face and this face again, scale wise, right?
Mm-hmm.
You sort of run into it. And sometimes all it takes is the way to get around it is just overdo one or the other. Like this head could have been maybe 40, 50% bigger, right? And then it wouldn't be competing with this one up in here. So,
okay.
But your shadows and your lighting are good. The body language is good here, right? Nice curve of her back coming into the legs. Nice. So, yeah. Your tech is really good. Like, I mean, it's almost impeccable, way better than what I can do. So good on you on all that.
Thank you.
So, yeah, well, I mean, you're like, this is, you're right on the cusp right now, right? Like, I wouldn't, have you done any professional work or what?
No, not yet.
Well, you're right there. So I would encourage you to keep going because something's going to happen pretty soon because you got too much talent for people not to pay attention to it right now.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank
you. I would continue to do pages that again are more like what you did with the Avengers, right?
Yeah. Because more continuity stuff.
Yeah. And the only reason I say that is not that this stuff isn't pretty to look at, right?
Mm-hmm.
But again, it's tech and it's space. So it gives me a limited amount of information on you, right? So it's like, okay, you can do anatomy, good. You can do tech, good. But I'm not seeing cars, birds, trees, buildings, human beings.
Okay.
A lot of the other things that are in some of the stuff that you're doing with the Avengers. So, but yeah, I like it. I like it. Yeah, this is really good. Yeah, nice body language here. Yep. Yes, Max. So keep it going, dude, because I'm telling you, the next time we talk, you're probably going to be a pro. So I think you're that close. So
thank you so much, Todd. For me, it's an honor to talk with you and be reviewed from you and receiving some hints and compliments from you.
Yeah. Like I said, there's only a few things that you just need to pay a little bit of attention to, but otherwise, you've got the vast majority of it right. So good for you. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, man.
All right. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you.
Appreciate you coming, Max. Awesome work. Up next, we're going to have Sergi. Sergi, you can hop up on stage. Todd, he did say he's feeling a little sick, and so he won't be able to talk, but he is listening attentively.
Okay. We're going to open up, Jake, going to open up this next one here.
Max, welcome to the Discord, by the way. Definitely keep us posted with your art. Keep posting that in Artist Alley because you got some sweet work.
Got Sergey, let's go here. So let's just start here real quick. Sergey, one of the things that happens at times is people, when they're doing organic stuff, they get a little bit polite, right? And so I'm seeing a little bit of polite here when things are organic, and I think what makes things seem kind of cool and real and gritty is that there's a inconsistency to it, right? So if we look at it here, if we look at, let's say, like all the spikes that you've got, but let's just pick here on the boot. So you've got the spikes evenly spaced out, right? So again, it's all nice and organized. And then all of them are about the same length and about the same thickness. So it's almost like, again, if you go and you were building this, you'd go to the store, you'd get your nails, and you'd pound one in, and they'd all come in. A little bit here, same here. I always think that, like, and not just on Spawn, but in other characters that are a little more gruff and rough around the edges, that what makes them sort of fun, excuse me, is that there is a bit of an inconsistency to all of this, right? So if you think about it like an animal's teeth, and you were to open up an animal's mouth, their teeth are all different lengths and all different sizes. And if you were to do those on there, then I think that you give a little bit more of a rough edge to Spawn and what he's doing. The cape and the cowl on Spawn, again, I'm a big fan of dealing with textures. So what you want to make sure is that different pieces feel like they're made out of a different material. In my mind, the cowl on Spawn, and a lot of artists actually get this wrong, even the professionals, they treat the cowl as the same material as the cape. And I don't. I think the cowl is made out of slightly different material and it's starched way more. So it's pretty stiff and it's very it's got a very, sort of geometry shapes to it. And then the cape is the one that has more wrinkles to it. But as you can see here, like here's your cowl here, and you're doing these little hack marks right here that look like sort of the hack marks here on the cape. And so those two are going to blend together because they look so similar. Where if this was just pure clean, it would look different than what you're doing on the cape. I also I think that this technique of these scratches have a place and a purpose. I would save them though for places that are not like a cape, because I would use these on maybe boulders or rocks or maybe even a poncho or something like that. But these should be, to me, big long lines. And then you can come in and do the short scratchy marks here and the short scratchy marks here. If this was the background or something like that, or this was a brick wall or something like that. What you don't want is to have your background, and I know this is probably part of the cape too, but you don't want the background, if this was bricks, to look like the capes that has a little bit, you're doing a little bit of the scratchy lines here on the necroplasm. So just, again, variety in all things is what makes all this stuff sort of work good. I mean, you can do it in color, but if you can get away with it in black and white, then it's only going to look that much better. This is Majestic Plan. So this is a nice. This is nice here. Again, if I'm being picky, I'd probably make the people that are trying to get away here, this girl who's holding this little baby here, I'd probably have made them a little bit bigger so it feels like they're coming towards camera a little bit more. And it would also give more contrast to the size of the characters here, right? So one of the things that I sort of pointed out on Max, that, variety in all these pages and panels and the way you put the camera, if you put it here, these people are going to be bigger. Just like if you put your hand towards camera, the hand's going to get bigger. And then you would have these characters would be a little bit smaller, so they would feel like they're way in the background a lot more. So. All right. Okay, so now we got this, and again, I understand color is going to help with all this, but I usually like to be a stickler pre-color, because if it looks good in color, then it's going to be dazzling when the colorist comes in and does it. So one of the things you want to do is this is your central character, right? Because why? It's the biggest person on the screen. So you want to make that character pop out. And the way to make it pop out is either they have the most detail on the page, or because they're so big, they actually have some of the biggest spaces that don't have detail. So right here, you've got a nice opening here. You've got a nice opening here in the leg, which is nice here. But then when you get into these shapes up in here and these shadows, then as you can see real quickly that like the size of those and the size of this black here and the size of this black here, right? And the size of this black here start to blend a little bit, right? This right here, this black. And again, I'm basically repeating the same note. Where, like now, instead of talking about people, and instead of talking about, oh, you got 5 people and they're kind of sort of in the same size, I'm now going, no, this is a big one here, but now I'm looking at, the shadows now are the things that are catching my eye a little bit. That this shadow and this shadow and this shadow and this shadow and this shadow, I can count 5 real quickly to my eye that kind of are about the same size. So what might have been cooler is that this person here, I don't know if this is a lecturer, who it is, but got the big black hair. Maybe there was a little more black either in this, or these shapes were just bigger and cleaner so that they popped out a lot more and they had less black. So then they wouldn't be competing with what's happening here and what's happening here. Also, when you're going to do speed lines, the speed lines are kind of cool. I always did my speed lines at the very end. And the reason I did that at the very end was so that I could pick a weight for these lines that wouldn't compete with anything that was on this character. So it looks like you're either you've got a little bit thicker line than I would use, or you're just bunching them so close it's looking like it's thicker. And so what happens is then it looks like about the scale of these lines and these lines here in the ribbons, and then even some of the ones on the nose, right? And so you don't want to compete with this character here. This character here should just pop, and then these can go back here. The easy way, if you got a good colorist, is that they'll just do what they call a color hold, and they won't even make these lines black. They'll just do them in a different color, and so that'll push this background back, and your character will move forward. Sometimes, as the artist, you can actually even indicate that. If you've ever seen original artwork, there's always notes running up and down the sides of pages. And that's just us, the artists, trying to give them some guidance into how they should do it. So here's a lot more of what I was just talking about then, right? So she's the biggest thing on here, and she's got the biggest pieces of sort of clear. Her whole leg here is clear. There's a big one here, clear. A little bit in the chest area, clear. Right down in here, some big shapes. Again, I would argue that because you had the hair here, I wouldn't necessarily put these scratch marks on here. Just keep them clear. A good colorist is going to add a nice flavor to that, anyways. But this is a really nice page. Again, just pay attention a little bit to the thickness of your background, because whatever you do in the foreground, sometimes you want to intentionally go thin in the background, minus some of the blacks and whatever. But in terms of the lines that are basically making mechanically the buildings, you might want to go a little bit thinner so they're not competing with what it is that you're doing with these characters here. So. But nice. I mean, again, here's nice detail here in the boots. Cool. Good pose. Nice variety. Here, look at her looking on the left. He's on the right. So they're facing each other, which is, how do we know that? Because they're facing each other here in this first panel, right? So we keep it. And then we go in closer on him. So you go female, male, female, male. So you're cutting back and forth. It's good storytelling. You've got nice room here for word balloons. decent amount right here. Although if I was writing this, I wouldn't have her saying much. I'd even try to just see if I could get her to say 1 or 2 words up in here. This one becomes a little bit tighter. Going to have to cover some of your artwork here. This one probably goes into the forehead. And depending on whether this comic book is a bleed comic book, there's only going to be a little bit of space here and here for word balloons. So sometimes like if all this was just down an extra half an inch, it would give a lot more room. Or if this ribbon was maybe half as thick, then it would also buy you some extra space to give to the writer as they're doing it and they're putting their word balloons in. So here, because here's what I don't like to do. I always tell my artists, I don't want to cover your art, especially your figures. I don't want to cover your figures. So, and I don't really like putting word balloons in between people. I try as much as possible to put it off to the side because right now they're having a stare down, and if you put a bunch of balloons in the middle, then it actually sort of makes a bridge across them that I think sort of takes away some of the tension. So if you're not going to put it in the middle, then it has to come up over here, which means that if this figure was maybe a half an inch over to the right, then it would open up this whole area here to put in captions and balloons and whatever else needed to be put in here, because the drawing of all of it's good. So this is another example here that, again, I understand a good colorist is going to take all this and probably fade the color out so these won't be pure black. I tell my colorist that. But in black and white, as you can see here, a lot of these lines are about the same as in the body here. I would just be, again, repeating what I said earlier before, I would just pay attention to that. Because then if you go a little bit thicker on the bricks here, then that's okay because the bricks are closer to camera. But as you get further away, everything should sort of thin out and make it just seem like it's in the distance a lot more. Cool close up. Nice slit eyes. Nice action here. So, yeah, lots of good stuff here. Again, here's a page here that we talked about before. This size is about the same as this size. That's about the same as this and this. So even just across here, 1, 2, 3, 4, I've got 4 that are kind of the same. Then I drop down, and this head here is about the same as this and this and this. So now I've got 5, and then I come down here. I've got another one, 6, and then your biggest head, which is this one. It's bigger, but it's not dramatically bigger, right? And so you could have cropped this and made this a lot bigger, right? People sometimes are afraid to crop like right here. Like you could have cut part of her shoulder here. You could have cut part of her head here, right? And still got like a nice sort of close up as long as you kept some of that arm right here. You could have cropped here and made that way bigger, and it wouldn't be competing in terms of the size and the scale of these other 2 panels here. But lots of good action. So keep up the action. Doing a nice job on that. So here's one here where you've got 2 people, but this guy's flying towards camera. So he's got a way bigger head than she does, right? So again, you're creating the illusion of depth. Oh, and by the way, as I scroll through this, these 2 big bodies aren't competing with anything down here, right? 1, 2, 3. So, and these are the ones that sometimes, again, when you get tiny figures, it becomes a little bit hard to sort of separate all of that, but sometimes it's just action. Same thing here, these 2, right? Competing sizes, which is okay if it were in the same panel, but they're not. They're 2 different panels. So you could have done something to adjust those. good. This is one good drawing. Everything's cool. But sometimes I'd watch out for facing camera, panel 1, facing camera, panel 2, facing camera, right? So there's no change to the angle of the good guy and the bad guy head. Which is okay. You can do it here in panel 1 and then keep it in panel 3 because you're just pushing in closer to his face. But I wouldn't compete with that with this one. So this head could have been sort of turned a little bit 3/4 and then looking down at him and put in there. The other thing too is you're getting a little bit close, and there's a couple pros that I've worked with that I've made the same note with, which is watch out a little bit with the way you render stuff, so that like on the chest here, this looks like, I'm going to say an 1/8 of an inch. It's a black 1/8 of an inch. And then here's an 1/8 of an inch here, 1/8 of an inch here, 1/8 of an inch here, about an 1/8 of an inch here, here, in the legs, here, over here, here in his leg, here in the shadows here, and then here, right? So this is the place where you want it here. You want to just create variety all the time. I mean, you're going to hear me say the same thing. I want variety in shadows. I want variety in the way you render, and I want variety in the size and the face of everybody. So you've got nice variety here. This is really nice between this face and this panel here. But if you, and you didn't do it here, but I've seen people do it, that they render with these little sort of 1/8 of an inch lines, and then they do a bunch of 1/8 of an inch lines here, and it distracts from one's a close-up and one isn't, right? So, and that's where at times you can go in and sort of use a bit of a thinner line, let's say on some of the detail that you're doing when you're up close, because you can do a lot more feathering and line work and, even the stubble and all that other stuff, so that you can create each one of those as being its own shape. What you don't want is to have it to make it feel like his stubble is the same as maybe what you're doing here in the grass in a couple places, right? So you don't want, I'm a big believer in the 1-inch rule, where everything should have its own texture. If you take a piece of paper, you cut out a 1-inch square and you move it across your page, you should be able to at least get a stranger to say, oh, that's different. And what you don't want them to do is say, if you showed 1 inch of this grass and then 1 inch of his face, you don't want them to get confused if they think that they're on the same texture, given that one's a human face and skin and the other one is blades of grass. So, but that just comes with time. I used to make all the same mistakes that I'm talking about today, and you just basically learn on the fly. So, nice big black shapes here. Good graphic never hurts any part of what we do. So it's okay to do graphic. This one again, I'm gonna go back to the adding variety to the shadows, right? So again, you got a slit, a slit, a slit, a slit, 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 right? Slit, 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 slit. Like you don't want so many of the same, right? So the easy answer is just fill some of these in. Just fill them in. That's okay. Make some of them bigger than others. So, but this is a good page. Again, sometimes you just need to do the far shot and everybody's the same size and you're just establishing stuff. Cool. So that's good. And then you've left lots of room here for captions, lots of room here for captions, and lots of rooms here for captions and balloons right in here. So although it seems like stuff is being tucked away, it is, because there's also going to be word balloons and captions. So anyways, I'm not going to go through all the rest of the pages here, but lots of good stuff. Again, here, the panel here and the panel here, see the size of the two faces. They become even more noticeable when they're sort of underneath each other, right? So when you're doing them underneath each other, then you've got to even be more dramatic in terms of the way that you basically make. And here, can I tell you, here's a little bit of a trick. Most people, when they try to do a correction, they try to get all the correction in one panel, right? And that's not how you necessarily solve this. The easy solution on this one, if I was in Photoshop, is that I would take this person and I would reduce them 10%. And then I would take this person and I would increase them by 10%. And so you're doing a 20% shift because you're getting 10 and 10, but you're getting the 20% difference in a combination of the two moves. And what happens is people want to do all 20% shift in one and go, I'll just make them really small. That's not necessarily how you get there. Sometimes it's an accumulation of 2 or 3 moves. And you say, hey, I want to add a variety that's going to add an extra 30% better view to it. Okay, sometimes just get 10% in one panel, 10% in the second panel, and 10% in the third panel. There's your 30%. Don't worry about trying to figure it all out in one panel. It'll drive you crazy, I guarantee you. So, yeah. Good page. Here's one here. Big face, little face. Some continuity here. Cool. The only thing I'd say here is that this is one where if knowing that they're in a castle is important, and it's not because you establish it here and you establish it here, then but if it was, then I wouldn't want to cover this because this is information that they're at a castle. So I would have to put it here. And it limits me then on how much I can put in here because I want to make sure that I'm letting people know that they're in the castle. I could also argue once you establish that you've got a castle in the castle, you didn't really even need this here. You could have actually almost everything from the top of this barn, you could have actually just whacked it out. And then there would have been plenty of room up there because you've already established that you got there by a castle. And then you got a little bit here. So, this is a good panel. So anyway, some good stuff here. Keep it up. So, although I wouldn't say that you're as close as Max, I'd say you're about a half a step behind him. But that means you're starting to see the light at the end of the tunnel here because this is really good stuff too. So, all right, thanks, Sergey.
Awesome work, Sergey. Thanks for coming up, man. Appreciate you submitting your portfolio. Up next, we have Tormented Chrome. Shot you an invite. Welcome to stage. Whoa.
Is this too loud?
Kind of quiet.
Jalen.
Better now.
Is that you? I got Jalen as the next one up. Is that who we got up here?
Tormented, are you Jalen?
Is that who it is?
Hello?
Well, either way.
Well, not either way. Hello?
Use somebody else's art. Open it up, though.
What would you like to be called? Tormented?
We'll call him Jalen. We'll call him Jalen since that's what his folder says.
Better?
That's better.
All right.
Perfect.
So how's it going?
Good. How you doing?
I'm doing good.
All right. So I usually, as we get further down the line, the people who go first and second usually get sort of, the detailed ones. And then I find that as I keep going, I get a little bit repetitious with what it is that I'm saying, because I usually look for the same 3, 4, 5 things, right?
Yeah.
So we'll go over them and take a look at some of it. Again, good drawing, a little nice anatomy up in here. The one thing that has to happen as we all sort of progress and get bigger and better is we've got to be able to turn the body as much as possible, right? So one of the tricks that I used to do to force myself, and you can do it yourself, is get somebody in your house, give them a blank piece of paper, give them a Sharpie or a pen or a pencil, and tell them to draw 2 big squiggly lines. And then when they draw the 2 big squiggly lines, your task is to now put a body that is confined within those 2 squiggly lines. And the only way the only way you're ever going to be able to do that is that you got to start twisting and turning the body, and you got to get inventive about how the camera is being shot and how the body is being posed, right? And I'm telling you, there's no way anybody does any 2 squiggly lines and you can do like a hero pose. Everything has to be action oriented. So, but we're here. So you're penciling and inking here. So the first thing that I would do, again, as I said there, is that you want to make the main character jump out as much as possible. So I've always been a big fan of like people who are hairy, right? Because done right, I think it looks super cool, right? So the trick I think on doing hair is that they're just little ticks, right? You're not really trying to make it curly per se. They're almost like you're just doing the number 1 over and 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 over at different angles, right? And the reason for doing that is because you got so many, and again, when we're doing the body, we have so many long lines, big feathering and stuff like that you don't want the hair to take away from your drawing, which is why I've mentioned before when I was doing Spider-Man, I used to do the webbing last on his body. And the reason was because I do all the rendering, got to get all the thickness, and then it basically forced me to basically do the lines as thin as possible so that all my drawing would still jump out, right? You could still see, not at the beginning of my Spider-Man run, but for sure by the midpoint and at the end of it, you could still see all the muscle structure, and I wasn't sort of hiding it with all the webbing, which is easy to do if you basically aren't having a variety with your line. So, and the reason I say that is that if you do little ticks, right? I mean, if you take a look at like a guy like Ryan Otley, he does really good sort of hair on people, is that then it won't compete with what you're doing here in the smoke or the shadows and stuff here, right? So this right here, these lines here are about the same length as what you're doing here, although these aren't overlapping, so that I understand that's hair and that's smoke. But even just in terms of the length of it, just get away from it and just don't compete with it. And then on top of that, then when you're doing some of your feathering, then even on the body, like see what you got here in the groin area, right?
Yeah, I see it.
Yeah. See how it a little bit is like what's happening in the smoke, right? This is that whole thing that we all just have to come up with like a Rolodex. Well, I keep using Rolodex. You guys don't know what that is, but a list in your memory of files in your memory of like, oh, smoke, I do it this way, right? Hair, I do it that way. Pipes and dents in pipes, I do it another way. Feathering on the body, I do it another way, right? So you don't want to be in a position a little bit where you're going that what I'm doing rendering wise on a body feels like it's competing with smoke, because those are just way too dramatically different. So the answer is you just keep, and the way you get there is that you just Jalen, is you just keep practicing and trying different methods until you go, oh, there's the one that works for me, right? That you just go, that you can see it, so that like here, like let's just take this. You got a nice pipe here. The structure is nice. I like that you came down at an angle and you curved it.
All right.
I would have treated this not like necessarily old pipe completely. I would have given it a sheen to start with, and then I would dirty it up second, right? And the reason is because if you make some nice long sort of shiny lines in there, then that is going to look different than anything that you have here, right? But you've got these little short lines again. That again, you've got some little short lines here, and then you got a lot of short lines up in the body and like down in the groin there or something like that. So again, you just go, oh, that's metal. Metal always begins a certain way, and then I just grunge it up a little bit, right? Or a lot, depending on where they're at, right? If it's after an explosion, you want a lot of grunge. But what you don't want is to have like all this sort of grunge here, and then you've got whatever you're doing up in here on top of the head. There's a little bit of grunge there, and then you got grunge in this post, and then maybe even if there's brick walls, you had some grunge. Like you don't want to. I'm going to keep saying the same thing. You don't want to distract yourself and make it redundant. You want all these things to be different, right? Whatever this is, smoke and fire. It looks like it's the only thing, at least from his knees up. This is the only thing here, fire. So it should be unique. Fine. It should just be unique, right? There's nothing that should even come close on this page to looking like how you do fire. And I'm not saying that I know how to do fire. I'm just saying that once you know how to do fire, there should be nothing that should compete with it. Because what competes with fire? Surely not metal. Surely not hair. And not smoke, because that's not fire, and not bodies and not wrinkles, right? So fire should be its own vibe, and you'll just figure it out, right? You'll get there. So okay, so again, big. I like big composition. So you got big composition. But again, going back to what I said earlier, you're competing with some of the textures. You've got all these nice lines in the wings, right? Which cool, because they're made up a bunch of feathers. But then you're wrinkling it so much that before we color it, and again, this might be purple and this might be white, so you get away with it a little bit in color. But like I keep saying, don't trust color. Yeah. You put so many lines in here that they're starting to look like what you did here in the wings, right? And over here, like if you look over here, this is that 1 inch rule. If I had my piece of paper and I cut out an inch hole right here, and then I put it here, I don't know that a stranger would notice that there's a difference. Yeah. I think if I went here and here, then yes, I think they would see the difference. Why? Because you got thick lines and you got really tiny thin lines. I don't think that that's what you did here. So you've done it in that spot right there. But again, the way that clothes wrinkle, right, shouldn't look like feathers. And it can, but your goal as an artist should be to just come up with a way of doing both so that they don't. Right. Yeah. And then I would argue here on the metal, just make that clean. Right. I mean, with some cool, you've got enough sheen lines on there that I don't know that it's necessary to have all these little lines here, because you've got so many lines elsewhere. If this was clean, that face would pop like in a heartbeat. Because look at this word balloon where you don't have any words in it. Look at how much that pops, because it's got so much open space, right? So you could have gotten rid of 80-90% of these lines, these little lines here in the cheek, because the composition's all good, and this face would go out there. And then whatever you did on the face, then you come in and you try and apply that exact same thing here with the hands and the arms. Because why? Metal, right? That's there. The other thing too is as you're trying to learn perspective, too bad I can't draw on here, but if that hand's coming towards camera, then this swoop would be pretty big. And then the one after it is another swoop, and then another swoop. So it gets further, as it gets further away from us, these things don't go across. They actually become big dips, so that it feels like it's going backwards, right? Because otherwise, this piece right here kind of looks like it's laying flat instead of going back, which is what it is that you want. You want it to feel like it's coming towards us. But that's just practicing and using perspective a little bit. So, some of the same notes here. Again, you got a big cool monster, it looks like, right? You got two little figures down here. Here's Spawn. Here's some females, cool. Here's Spawn's cape. Again, you've got a lot of lines in the cape so that it's competing with a lot of the lines up in here, but color would pop it a little bit. But again, this guy here, right? If I was going to do, there's two things I would do on this thing. If I was going to make this as detailed as you are, then I would simplify what's happening in the behind him. I would have made all of this black, like see all this back here? I would have made that black. I would have made behind this horn here black, this black, just to frame the monster a bit more, right? And then maybe again you're doing like you got a big horn here, which is cool. And I like a lot of what you did here in the rendering here, but then the shadow it's casting should probably again have a little bit more black in it so that all this detail in the horn pops out, right? So shadows and blacks and stuff are framing devices to basically help you have your stuff sort of jump out at us, right?
Yeah.
So again, you got, in like if you look at the detail you did in the wings, there's nice detail in the wings, but it gets lost. Why? Because you've got so many lines now in the background of it, right? That at first glance, I can promise you that if you showed that to your neighbor and you showed it to him for 3 seconds and then went away and said, did they have any wings, that they would go, huh? Right? Because they wouldn't necessarily see this one or this one. And I know they're both there, right? They're both, because again, my eye is trained to sort of find everything real quickly. But you don't want good art. You don't want the reader to have to work, right? So the readers like it when there's clarity and they don't have to work. They just basically can enjoy the ride of the comic book. No different than when you're watching a movie. You don't want to have to basically keep guessing, like, where are those people? Why are they doing this? How can we use that camera angle? I'm confused. You don't want to be confused in a movie either. And the moment you are, it basically bums you out a little bit. Comic books, I would argue, is the same thing, right? The easier and the clearer the storytelling is, then the easier it is for somebody to get on your ride and go for a ride with you. And if you make it fun and easy for them, they'll come back. And the fun part is drawing big giant monsters like this. That's the fun part. The easy part is making it so that that monster is really prominent so they can enjoy the fun. So, but anyways, like I said, your bones, the bones of what you're doing is really good. I would just, unfortunately, I think you need to either concentrate more on your penciling or refine some of the variety in your inking. Because, I mean, again, now that I talk about it, hopefully you can see it. There's a lot of similarity on what's going on here, right? That is a little bit here and here, right? It's like it's getting a little bit jumbled at first glance, right? And the easy way you know whether something is clear or not is make it about 3 inches on your page. Just like put it on your computer and make it 3 inches. And if you can still read it at 3 inches, then there's clarity. And if you going, what is that? And you got to keep making it bigger and bigger to discover it, then it's not there. Again, that can't be true for every single panel, but it should be true for the big panels. And this is a big panel. This is a splash page, right? This is like a cover, right? A cover should work in a heartbeat. There shouldn't be any second guessing on it. So, but anyways, keep going at it, right? Work on the variety of your ink in there. And I think that'll be your next step there. So,
all right.
Thanks, bud.
Thank you. I appreciate it a lot too.
Yeah, sure. No, I appreciate you showing us.
Awesome portfolio, Jalen. Thanks for coming up. Up next, we got Clockwork. I just shot you an invite. If you go ahead and accept that, you can pop up on stage. Welcome.
My time is up. Hello.
Hello. Dun, dun, dun. All right. Raven. All right. So this is actually a good variety of portfolios you got here. So you Raven, you heard me talking about sort of over rendering on some of the pages and having too much the same, right? So as I look at this real quickly, I would again a little bit the note, but I would actually sort of say almost the opposite, that your stuff now is you're simplifying too much, right? So you've got like, wrinkles are like thin little lines, shoelaces are thin little lines, wrinkles in the coats are thin little lines, highlights on the hair, thin little lines. Like, so this is where you can have a little bit of fun, right? A shoe, like have a little bit of fun with the shoelaces and, doing a second seam here on the shoe, right? Just so that it doesn't compete then with some of your line work that you've got up in the pants, right?
Right.
The shoe becomes the shoe, the pants become the pants. When you put people, and I know because I struggle with it for a while, when you put people, and I probably still do, but when you put people in clothes, you now have to sort of treat it like there's a body in there. And so if somebody's leg is going to go into pants, then it's going to stretch. So it stretches here at the crotch area and it goes down, which is cool here. And then you just got to watch out for a little bit of what I would call sort of arbitrary wrinkling. And I know in real life that's what happens, because if you look at photos, some wrinkles don't make sense. But to me, you've got to sort of cheat what it is that you're doing with your wrinkles. So let's say you had your wrinkles here, you've tightened up your wrinkles here. Why? Because we all sort of know how pants sort of fold up in these areas. But if you've got pants, they either are going to come up short and they're going to lay straight, or they're going to puddle, right? And they're going to come down and they're going to puddle down here. So these wrinkles might sort of go this direction here, which would then be different than all these other ones that are going up and down, right? So you get to come down, and then you get to do some that are coming across up over here, across up over here. There's usually tension in clothing underneath the armpit area, like in here. There's usually tension in the elbow area, up in here. And how do you know? Depending on what clothes you're wearing right now, just look at your own clothes, right? It gets bunched up. It usually gets bunched up at joints, right? So you don't want to make knees too baggy. So you don't need to put a ton there. But if you're going to put a couple extra lines, put it on the back, because that's where the bend comes on our clothes there. So, and then the stuff comes around the shoulder, and then it gets pulled in towards the chest, so you could have a couple of the lines in there. But now you've got like this line is going up. I don't know. I probably would have done more east-west instead of north-south on that, just a little bit. Superheroes. I like superheroes to feel like they're tough. The thinner you make somebody's neck, the younger they look. And arguably the weaker they look. So this is one of the reasons why I got a cowl on Spawn, just so that if anybody tries to draw a skinny neck on him, I'll never know, because he's got a big cowl wrapped around it. But if you had come down on this head and just pretty much just did a little bit of jog to about here and then came straight down here and beefed up his neck a little bit, or made his neck thicker up over here, he would just feel like he's 40 pounds heavier, right? If you want him to be a little bit tougher. Now, again, I'm not saying that's who this guy is, because he looks like he's pretty ordinary, right? He's an ordinary guy because he's wearing a three-piece suit. This is an ordinary guy right here. But in terms of your oversimplifying, again, so here's a cheek line. Here's sort of sideburns. Here's hair. Here's some wrinkles, right? Somehow you need to, again, figure out how all these aren't the same, right? So if I was to go in and blow, maybe I can. I don't know if I can go in on this. Let me see. Oh, yeah, there. So if I go in here, right, you don't want the outlines of the eyes. You could even put an extra line there. Why? Because we have an eyelid that folds when we open our eyes. But you've got like the thickness of the eye and the mouth, and then the highlight here, and the hair, and the clothes are all about the same weight. And so I would advise to try and, make this a lot thinner and give it more lines here so that you have way more lines that are thinner for the hair. Why? Because we've got a gazillion hairs on our top of our head. So why not try and create that illusion? And then down in here, since you got cuffs and stuff like this or collars, you can put a little bit of a shadow here or something like that. And then you can put a shadow under the neck. This could have been black up in here. If you're going to do these lines here for the sideburns, I wouldn't do that for the shadow here. I would have just made that black. That would have been cool. But you could have easily done a lot more rendering in the hair here. That would have then separated it from this opening, which is the face and his mouth there. So let's see what else you got. So here's nice color. That's nice. Are you doing that in Photoshop, or how are you doing this?
It's Photoshop, yeah.
Yeah, nice. See, what we're talking about, like here's the joint, and it looks like the biggest wrinkles at the joint, right? So, and then you've got these natural seams here, and then at the armpit, we got some here. But again, if it was a t-shirt, it would actually go on the other side. So, again, see these tiny wrinkles here?
Yeah.
And then it opens up here, right? So again, those are big contrast areas. Yeah. So again, to repeat some of what I said, so once you decide how you want to do the coat, right? And you want it to come across, right? Again, if you're going to do some lines down, then some of these lines might have want to gone across just a little bit. But let's just say you wanted to do that, and you keep the jacket all the same. Cool, all right. Then again, this is where I would then do some wrinkles east and west here, and a little bit in here, so they're playing against these big long lines that you're using for the cape, right? So again, you don't want the pants to come across as part of the cape. So, oh, that's cool. Alligator head. I like it. I like stylized stuff. Are these your pencils or somebody else's?
Those are Stegman's pencils. He posted them online and gave people free reign to do inks for them, but the inks are mine.
Okay. So here's Stegman stuff here. One thing about pencils that are so alluring is that there's all these gray tones in it, right? Mm-hmm. So it almost creates the illusion of depth just by the darks and the lights of the pencil, scratching up in here, right? Which, as you can see, when we get into black and white, we're at the mercy. It's either black or it's white, right? Mm-hmm. But this is where, again, we're feathering with a little bit more white and cutting in a couple of extra lines there, just breaks up some of the black so that it's not all quite harsh. You can sort of feather into blacks, right? Like if I look at the top of the head here, he didn't quite complete it. If I was inking this, I would have sort of hatched it in different directions just to fade it so that it was going back and not quite such a simple line there. And then I don't know if this is cape or water or whatever it is, but again, let's just say it's water. or liquid, then you could come in with the sheen coming down here so that these things aren't necessarily competing with this. So it's a complicated drawing that Ryan's done, and you're going to need a very, very talented colorist to come and separate it out. But we have to come in there and help them out. So BWS is black with stars. That's sort of shorthand in our industry, and you know that. So whenever I see black with stars, I don't get shy with the stars, right? Because if you would splatter the stars a lot more, like on a very, very clear day, if you've ever been out camping, then all of this black here and all this black here would be way different than all the black that's on the bottom half, right? But because there's not quite enough of it, it's not making the jump quite as much as it should be. And then when you get into some of the cross hatching, which is what he's doing here, usually the way that works is you start off thin, and then you get a little bit thicker and a little bit tighter and a little bit tighter and a little bit tighter. And it basically is like fading a little bit. You can kind of see it. He's doing it a little bit here. But sometimes you can even come in with an extra row of cuts just to make it even do. But see how it seems like it's a little more airy up here?
Yeah.
And then his line, see how it gets darker and sort of thicker compared to up here? Right? So he's wanting it to go, just like you're going from the edge of a forest deeper and deeper into the forest, you want that to feel like it's getting thicker, right? And here it's more of a dead weight. And you know you're doing it, quote unquote, sort of right if you can't see the edge of the black, right? So my goal whenever I do cross hatching, or thereof, is that I always make it so that nobody can tell where the edge of any of this line was. Even though that's how I start with this black line. I just keep going and going and going until it just feels like it's just, like a shirt and threads are coming off of it. You can't really tell where the beginning of it is. So again, we got the hands there. Yeah, it'd be. This is a tough piece. This is a tough piece. So, kudos. I like your art pieces. They're really evocative. I'm a big fan on catching people's attention. So it's just like it's so odd. It's interesting. So again, same thing here. A little bit too simple. And again. Look at the spacing here of the bands on the arm, and then the spacing of the lines on the fingers, and then the spacing of the wrinkles on the face, right? It's like half an inch, half an inch, half an inch, half an inch, half. We go up here, a bunch of half an inch, right? This is that thing that's just watching variety, right? So if you're going to have that hand like that, then I would have made this maybe twice as wrapped. Right in here, twice as wrapped, so that what was above and below the hand is definitely different. So, and then you could have then overdone a little bit the horns, so that if you added a lot more lines in the horns, then it would separate it from what you're doing on the face, right? But if you keep this simple of what you're doing here, then it's going to run into the simple of the face, and you don't want the fur of the face to run into the bones of the horns. So yeah, same thing here, right? You got some cool stuff happening on the arms. It looks like he's sort of grungy or burnt or zombie like or something. And you don't want those lines to compete with wrinkles of pants, right? So, or the smoke. The smoke could have swirled here and danced a little bit around up in here. Just make all this stuff different, right? Make all don't let this smoke compete in any way with what you're doing here. And some of these big long lines are competing with these long lines here in the coat. So, but, all right. Keep it up. Keep it up.
Thank you.
All right. I think our last one here, Gavin.
Hello.
Hello, Gavin. How you doing, bud?
It's been a rough few weeks, Todd. I'm going to be honest. It's been a rough few weeks for me.
Yeah. Well, eventually, this too shall pass. So,
well, thank you. It's getting better because I'm talking to my hero.
Yeah. So, unfortunately, we've got this thing called life. It gets in the way sometimes. And the thing about life is that sometimes it kisses you, and other times it bites you. So you must be getting bit a little bit right now. So, but eventually it comes around and it gives you a kiss, and we can't control either one of them, which can be frustrating. So, all right, let's take a look at what Gavin's got here for us. What are you inking with, Gavin?
I use these stylus marker pen things. There's it's like thick, fine, and then detail. So it's like 3 levels.
Yeah.
And I like to try to use as much variety as I can. The 4 that I wanted to present to you, I have 2 like just character shots and then a splash page.
Yep.
That 3rd one, and then my example of a panel layout for the 4th example.
Okay. All right. So I don't know if you've been listening or not, but one of the earlier artists, remember I was saying, go get somebody in your family to draw 2 squiggle lines, right? Squiggle, and then try to put Punisher in there, right? So what I see real quickly is that, again, he's faced, this is, I call it the sandwich man pose, because you could put a loaf of bread on the front of him, or a piece of bread in the front, a piece of bread, and you wouldn't really sort of injure him too much, right? Sort of, action figures are like that, right? They're sort of flat. If you turn them sideways, they're kind of flat. They're like the thick meat in the middle of a sandwich. So you want to try to stay away as much as possible from Sandwich Man, right? And what I mean by that is that his chest is completely facing squarely to the camera, which is okay. But so is his groin, and so are his legs. This arm is kind of flat to his side a little bit. The head perfectly centered, right? Like perfectly centered up and down, right? Try to get all these pieces off center as much as you can. The way to do that, you turn them, and it forces you to have to basically put things off center, because that's how anatomy works. And then even this fold, you got a fold here, but then it folds so perfectly that I get to see all the hand and all the arm, and it's like it took a piece of paper and I folded it, and then the gun is being held straight up and straight down. So the thing that we try to do, that we have to try to accomplish as comic book people, is we have to try and create the illusion of depth, right? And I think actually there was a couple of the earlier artists that did a really nice job of it, where I was saying, like, you put the shield in front of the face and you put crackles, and you've got the body twisting and turning, if you saw some of the early stuff. So what I find is that what the value of these poses is to learn anatomy. And once you learn anatomy and you feel confident with how you can draw the body, then that's when you start twisting and turning and moving it all around, right? So so I would keep practicing. So I just feel like, yeah, I've got it. I know where every piece is, so that when you turn it, your brain still knows where those lines should go, right? So so I'd look at a little bit of anatomy of arms and stuff, because the shoulder is kind of like up in here. You've come down with the shoulder muscles a little bit lower than they should be. Then you got the bicep, and then you've got this coming up in here. These 3 lines are throwing me off a little bit, because I think they're in the kind of the wrong spot. But if you just had an extra line here, maybe a line up in here or whatever, and then this one wasn't digging in so much, because at some point the muscles of the forearm start to overlap the bicep, especially if it's coming forward. But just look at some anatomy, and then trace over it a couple times, and then go, oh, okay, there's where it is, and then try and go and draw it on your own, and just remember what it was you just sort of traced over. Don't do the exact same drawing. You can, if that's helpful, but just sort of going, oh, the pod of the shoulder is usually this big. The pod of the bicep is this big. The length of a forearm is this big, right? So, again, same thing here. So we've got head squared, centered, straight over the chest, flat, straight to camera. Spider-Man, who twists and turns and contorts, is coincidentally bending his legs perfectly straight. Because what you don't want to do is do a drawing where I feel like I could cut this in half and put a mirror next to it, and I would get kind of the same drawing, right? That the left side and the right side shouldn't really try to mirror each other. I mean, yes, you can when you do the hero pose, and you can do it a little bit, but for the most part, that shouldn't happen, right? There should be even stuff like, why can't the shoulder be higher up here? Like, I mean, shift your own shoulder. If you're reaching for something up over your head, you see how your shoulders tilt. One goes lower than the one that's reaching up, right? There's a natural movement of all of our body parts that get there. So this is your layout here. Again, this is where anatomy perspective comes in. So once you, and again, if you're doing stuff with a lot of clutter, then there would be a ton of guidelines that you would end up being put in there. But let's just use this. If your perspective is, let's say here, this is what you call your vanishing point. I don't know if you guys can even see that. It's like way off. When you draw your line comes here, right? So that angle would be here. And then as you go back to your vanishing point, you draw another line here. It's just basically, it's going to tell you where these lines have to go. And then that line's going to tell you where the bottom of these two legs will fit. And then when you come over here, that line's going to tell you where the edge of this desk has to go. And the edge of this desk. And the edge of this desk, right? If it's all sort of in the same room. And if it's all lined up, then to some extent, then it actually even dictate some of what's happening up over here. So, I'd go and look at, there's a couple, I'm sure if you just Google, how do you do perspectives, right? Once you learn the rule, because I didn't know, you put a vanishing line anywhere, right? You got a horizon, you put a vanishing line, and everything comes from that line, or from that dot, from a dot. You do the vanishing line, and then you do a dot. And wherever you put the dot, every line has to come from that dot. And you just go, and then everything you draw has to then fit in that. That's how you do buildings. It's how you can scale people in a lineup. It's how you can do a car coming at you, right? It's all in perspective, guns, whatever. I mean, everything follows it. And then you start getting complicated with, 1 point perspective, 2 point perspective, 3 point perspective. But I would just start with like a 1 point perspective and sort of get that rule in my head. Because once you get it, I don't even use a ruler anymore. I just do it freehand because I can imagine where the vanishing point should be. So I just basically do it all freehand. That was a trick that a great artist, George Perez, taught me. He would do it all freehand too, and just go, it's close enough, Todd. But if you know the rule, then it's not perfect, but it's kind of 95% there. It's not off. Nobody knows. Nobody's going to take out a ruler and measure it and go, oh man, you're off 1/8 of an inch, Todd, right? That we could just end up doing that. So anyways, there's, like I said, if I, too bad I can't draw on some of the stuff. I could draw a couple of lines real quick that I think that you would see. But, yeah, there's some cleanup that needs to be done on some of the perspective of this for me to buy that all of this is in a room, and it's not getting flattened, and it's not just drawings on paper, which is, again, the whole illusion. Again, once you feel confident about what you're doing, this is that thing. Again, you got straight towards camera, straight towards camera, straight towards camera. His back is turned, but it's still completely back towards camera, right? Everything is sort of either like straight to camera or a complete easy profile. And I like to do profile shots because they're easy cheats. But anyways, and then if you're going to do grass here, it looks like a little bit up in here. I don't know. Maybe I'd do little circles or something at the end of some of this. I wouldn't make rain be scratches if I'm going to make grass scratches and weed scratches. Especially if you're going to make some wrinkles and make those sort of line scratches here. I try to, again, same thing I've been telling everybody, right? Just do variety. See how you got this big V in the back?
Yeah.
Right? Then do some more V's. Do a line, big drop, do another line, another big drop, another V. And then from there, then some of the lines can come off the V's, right? And all of a sudden this thing looks like it's folding up behind him. But even here, you got the winds blowing, right? It looks like the wind's blowing at least a little bit. But somehow the cape is landing so that it's perfectly landing, 8 inches from each side of his body at the same length. I mean, what's cool about capes and drapery is that it basically gets to blow like a flag. And the more asymmetrical you make it, not symmetrical, asymmetrical means don't make them the same, right? Don't make it so that, again, I can cut that panel in half and put a mirror up to it and make it look the same. So, but anyways, work on some of those, work on your anatomy, and then start turning the body. And then once you start turning the body, then it'll just force you to basically go, oh, okay, I've got to do wrinkles big on one side and small on the other because I'm going to put 20% of the cape on this side, and then I'm going to put 80% of the cape on this side, right? That's cool, right? Take a look at how we draw Batman and Superman and Spawn and characters with a lot of cape, right? We try to sort of make it feel like it's blowing in the wind inconsistently all the time. So, all right, I appreciate it.
Well, thank you, Todd. And I'm going to do the squiggly line trick right after I'm done with the portfolio review. I'm gonna get right to work on that. And so
okay.
Thank you so much.
All right, be good.
You too. Thank you, Todd.
Okay.
Appreciate you coming up, Gavin. All right, Todd, thank you for your time.
Sure.
A lot of great advice.
Yeah, no, this was actually a good one because there was a wide range, right? And the thing is, the value of this is that we all start at different levels and then we progress to the next level. And it looked like there was like 3 or 4 progressions here. If I was to line them up from like closest to being a pro to furthest away, right? But we all got to start someplace, and then you just get a little bit better, move, and then you add a couple things, you go to the next one, and then you go to the next one, and you go to the next one, and then eventually you cross the threshold, right? But and by the time you cross the threshold, you've surprisingly added 100 things to your sort of skill sets that you didn't think you could do when you first started out. So, yeah, it's good. This was a good showing of a lot of different sort of points and skill. So
yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of information out there, and if you just got your portfolio reviewed, it will be on YouTube, so you can go back and take some notes.
That's it. All right. Appreciate everybody showing up today. We'll do it again soon in the future.
Sounds good, Todd. Appreciate your time. Thank you, everyone, for coming out this Friday. And we have a live drawing tomorrow as well, if you guys are interested. Appreciate your time, Todd. Have a good one.
Okay, good.